Richard, you got to love this time of the year and also love that Selection Sunday, pretty drama free for Alabama men's and women's basketball. Roll Tide.
It was a great season for both of the teams. And you talk about being solidly in the NCAA tournament field on the men's side and the women's side. Listen, I don't know if it's a better time to be an Alabama basketball fan to see what both of these programs have been doing and what they can probably continue to do.
Well, it's certainly exciting as we'll start to talk first of all about Nate Oates and this men's basketball team you got to see all throughout this season. Just if you could take us through the journey of this team from where they were back in November with all the high expectations coming off the Final Four run to where this group is now getting ready for the big dance.
Well, obviously, coming off the Final Four, this is a team that had high expectations. They had a lot of changes in the roster from players who were able to enter the portal, but huge expectations from the people that they will get out of the portal. Big area of emphasis was going to be the interior play with Clifford Amore added to the roster. He had two McDonald's All-Americans joining the team and LeBaron Philon, who showed to probably be the most consistent and potentially the best freshman that they've had in this class. But this is a season that I thought was going to be tough for Alabama, and just from the standpoint that this was a challenge for Nate Oates to have to be able to manage so much talent coming on this roster. I think there's been some untimely injuries with Latrell Wrightsville throughout the course of the season, Chris Youngblood getting back into action, but he's managed it pretty well. And now here he is, had an opportunity to win the SEC, but an opportunity now to see if they can make another run in the NCAA tournament with another strong team.
What does it say about this group? Obviously, it was a good performance at Tennessee, but the last 30 seconds got away from Alabama, losing on a buzzer beater to the Volunteers. Then a week later, Alabama goes to Auburn, the regular season champions. Pretty well managed the final 30 seconds of that fourth quarter and in overtime to get a buzzer beater win of their own. Does that really show how this team is capable of bouncing back?
Well, the reality is that it shows that Alabama can beat anyone. I mean, this is a team that can get back to the Final Four, and if they have some matchups that play into their favor, they could potentially win a national championship. You still have a talented team. You may have benefited by the early exit in the SEC tournament to have a couple of days to rest and regroup. You have a high seed with the number 2 seed that gives you an opportunity to have be heavily favored in your open to get the jitters out and work on some things to get some momentum for the NCAA tournament. But they have showed some inconsistencies, particularly when they're playing against really good interior play. Some of the wins that they've had or losses that they've had on the season, rather, have been against teams that have been able to control tempo, be really good defensively, and pound the ball inside. But as you mentioned, winning on the road at Auburn shows that they can get it done, as well as the number of big wins that they've had throughout the course of the season since they've challenged themselves with a tough schedule. So you only can hope that Alabama brings their best effort, their best version of this team. And if they do that, I think they can find themselves fighting to get back in the Final Four.
To get that win against Auburn, the ball went in the hands of Mark Sears, who was just named an AP first team All American for what he did this season. Just what do you make of Mark Sears and the game he has right now? And is there a lot of pressure on him getting ready for March Madness, or do you feel like he'll step up to the moment?
Well, I think there's been a lot of pressure on Mark Sears all season long. When you are the preseason projected SEC Player of the Year, and I believe the National Player of the Year, and you shot last year, averaging almost 22 points a game, shooting 50% from two, 40% from three, and around 90% from the free throw line. The expectations are really impossible for someone to be able to come back and do better than that. I thought last year with that type of numbers, Alabama being within a game in the last couple of games of the regular season of competing to win the SEC and being a Final Four team, I thought that he should have gotten more consideration to be the SEC Player of the Year and also should have been more considerate of an NBA draft pick. But here we are. It's been an up and down season, mainly because of the expectations. He's had some games where he's underperformed, but he's starting to hit his stride and getting confidence. Some 30-point games down the stretch and the big finish on the road at Auburn. I think you have to have your best version of Mark Sears, who's able to get downhill, hit shots at the outside. And I've been seeing some mid-range floaters, which I think will be key in the NCAA tournament.
And obviously, the health of this team certainly a concern, as you noted on a moment ago. Grant Nelson going out against Florida with injury. If he's unable to go, for instance, in this first round matchup against Robert Morris, who has to step up on this Alabama team in his absence?
Well, it's exactly that position. I think the power forward position is going to be the most critical slot for Alabama. Grant Nelson, when he plays his best game, he gives you a two-way performer who has versatility on the inside and outside, who can slide his feet on the perimeter, and he can also rim protect. His shot making ability from the outside is always something of a premium for Alabama if he can make shots early in the game, because now it makes the defense to respect him, which opens up driving lanes for the guards. But if he's not able to play, they're going to have to get it done by committee, and Jaron Stevenson is going to have the tournament of his life. He's really going to have to step his play up and show some maturity in that position and play to the potential that he has. If he can do that, as well as Mo Diabate bringing the same type of energy that he's been bringing consistently all season long, I look to those two guys as well as Clifford Amore, because it's going to have to happen on the interior play. Alabama is an outside shooting team, a slot driving team, getting to the basket, but it's still going to rely on the bigs playing well and hitting some shots from the outside.
Crimson Tide will start playing the NCAA tournament on Friday in Cleveland. What do you make of the draw for Alabama? First of all, against Robert Morris, and then on the other side of the bracket, Alabama could, with a win, await the winner of Vanderbilt, a team they faced earlier this year, and St. Mary's.
Well, you never want to overlook any team, and Robert Morris obviously will be prepared. But Alabama has been rewarded by having a strong season and a strong schedule. And when you have the two seed, you have to take care of business. So you can't overlook them. But moving forward, you'd have an opportunity potentially with a strong St. Mary's team if they can get past Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt, we know what they can do, speeding up the tempo, creating turnovers, and playing a brand of basketball that allows them to stay in the game until the end. So in that matchup, that's going to be fun to watch to see what Vanderbilt and St. Mary's can do. St. Mary's will have a team that can slow it down. Machulius is a really good point guard who's really good at controlling the tempo and running that show. But Alabama's got to get past Robert Morris in the first round. In the tournament, it's important to take everything one game at a time, and you want your players to have supreme confidence and understand that every single possession matters because it's win or go home.
And kind of with that as well, you got to play in the NCAA tournament. What is this week like getting ready for an NCAA tournament game? We hear all these stories about assistant coaches, not sleeping at all, watching all this tape of these different teams as they get ready for their individual scouts. But as a player, how tough is it to stay locked into this one game at a time mindset?
I always enjoyed the NCAA tournament because when you get to the spring, the hard practicing is over. Coaches seem to have a little bit more concern about your health and your bodies at this point. There's no more installs that you're doing as far as trying to grow your team from a fundamental standpoint. You're here. The rotation is there. You know who's going to play. You know what's expected of you. You've been in condition now. Now it's just a matter of executing a game plan on a team that you've never played and that you're going to have a quick turnaround if you play another game. So you want to be sharp. You want to be confident. You want to be fresh. But when you're traveling to a different site and you take on all the festivities of the NCAA tournament, short practice slots on the court where you just go out there for a moment, having a more detailed practice at a different location other than the arena that you're going to play in, and just having the back-to-backs of tournament play where you just only get 30 minutes to warm up and come right on the court and you get to it. I mean, it's a different environment. But Alabama should have the experience from last year that they can lean on. But I always enjoyed the moment. And the biggest thing that I would tell to anyone who's in the NCAA tournament, truly play each game like it's your last. Because every single possession matters, and that type of high-level pressure basketball is the best thing to be a part of when everything counts.
Of course, this weekend, the first and second round of the NCAA tournament, sticking with the men's side for just a moment, 14 schools from the SEC getting a ticket to the big dance. I mean, just remarkable. And we've talked about it before this season. What a great year the SEC had. As we get ready for next weekend, the start of the Sweet 16, do you think we're going to see a lot of SEC teams advance to the second weekend?
It's definitely a possibility, and I think it's a possibility that you could see 4 SEC teams in the Final Four, just like you saw in the SEC tournament. I mean, it was a loaded year. Now, the one thing that I would look for is that if I'm any other team or any other league, I'm using that as bulletin board material. It's in my locker room all year long. Everybody's talked about how big and bad the SEC is, and the SEC has not won a national championship since Kentucky got it done in 2012. So I think for me, the most important thing is which SEC team can be the last team standing to win a national championship. If you can't get it done and be at the top of the totem pole when it's all said and done, then I don't know how much the fanfare and the hype of the season really mattered. But definitely, the SEC has a lot of opportunities. You have strong teams, and it might be a situation where you might be a better pick to take the SEC over the field.
I certainly like the sound of that. Let's slide over to women's basketball. You've covered Christy Curry and the Crimson Tide women's team a lot this season. Alabama earns a number 5 seed in the Birmingham Region 2, and the Crimson Tide will get ready for Green Bay coming up on Saturday in the first round in a always dangerous 5 versus 12 matchup. What's most important for the Crimson Tide, first of all, coming up on Saturday?
Well, first off, I got to give credit to Christy Curry and what she was able to do this season. I thought that Vic Schaefer at Texas did a great job with the number 1 seed and being coach of the year, but I thought Christy Curry should have had far more consideration to be the SEC coach of the year when you consider all things about what she was able to manage with her roster, with injuries, and putting her team in a situation to be competing to host the NCAA tournament game, but just didn't have the finish that they needed down the stretch. I mean, so kudos to her for what she was able to do. But within that, I think now this is a team that has to regroup. They played strong all season long, but coming off of that SEC tournament loss against Florida and upset in the first game, they've had some time to regroup and get things going. But with that trio of guards, Sarah Ashley Barker, Zay Green, and Aaliyah Nye, this is a team that when they get hot and they're rolling on all cylinders offensively, they are tough to stop. So as you mentioned, the 12-5 game against Green Bay, people look at that as a trap game. But I look for Alabama to be prepared, and I also look for Essence Cody to try to have a huge performance in that outing.
How much does experience help when you get ready for a matchup like this? I mean, 4 of the 5 starters played for Alabama in 2 NCAA tournament games last year in Austin. Zay Green has had a very decorated, long career with a lot of different stops. So, does that help Alabama getting ready for a run like this?
It should help. But sometimes, you want to be free and you want to be loose. At least when you do have the experience, you're able to draw upon those memories and the experience of the moment of that urgency that's needed in tournament play. You mentioned several of the players that have played in the NCAA tournament for Alabama, and they have definitely competed and know what it's like to run into tough opponents and what it takes to get it done. You can only hope that veteran experience on this team can use the leadership that it takes to help the younger players to understand the moment quickly. If you look at their last game that they had in the SEC tournament, you had to rely on a lot of play from some young players as foul trouble started to mount. This is the moment where you have to grow up and you have to make sure that you get everyone elevated to their highest level.
And of course, Crimson Tide will have to do that away from home, getting ready for these first 2 rounds. Potentially could run into the host team, Maryland, in the second round. Do you like that in the women's game, having a team get to host the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament? Obviously, Alabama wanted to be the host in Tuscaloosa at Coleman Coliseum, but fell just 1 seed short of that. But is that how tough of a setup is that to try and get to the second weekend?
I think it's tough, but I think it's a good setup. I think that you should reward the regular season. Alabama had an opportunity to be in the mix to get that. And, to also have the fan base and the interaction of people to come out there and continue to support the game, I think is important. It's something that you give these teams an incentive in the regular season that you're playing for. And it makes, even if your team is out of contention to win the conference title, they have something that they're playing for until the end. And I think that's really good for the game. And I think that obviously Alabama missed out on that opportunity, but they've been proven that they can win games on the road. And now they just have to go into a tough environment if they're able to meet a host team to get it done.
Kind of what I asked about the men's side. The women's side, some talented teams from the SEC. We saw co-champions between South Carolina and Texas. We'd love to see Alabama against South Carolina coming up in a week or so in Birmingham. They'd be matched up in the Sweet 16. But just what are your thoughts on where the women's game stands? Obviously, some good talent from the Big Ten as well with some of the West Coast schools.
Well, I would think that from a popularity standpoint, it seems to be at an all-time high. But the women's game has always been good. That's the reality of it. I think it is good that you do see the notoriety that it's now getting, the popularity of people tuning in and packing the venues to check out the women's game. But if you followed it over the years, there's always been good players, there's always been great coaches, there's always been passionate fan base. But I guess you have to respect the fact that it's good to see that people now are acknowledging that on a larger scale. Alabama's had some situations with under Christy Curry where you've seen this program head in the right direction. I believe 4 out of the last 5 years in the NCAA tournament, and when they were in the NIT, they made a deep run to have an opportunity to win that tournament. So the trajectory that you've been able to see with Alabama women's basketball may be on pace with what you're seeing with the national brand of the game. And I think that's exciting. I've always been a big person to love the women's game, and I hope to continue to see it grow.
Certainly hope so as well. Well, Richard Hendricks, I'd like to keep doing this with you the next few weeks. That means Alabama is staying in both tournaments, men's and women's basketball. Just thank you for the time and insight you've given us, and enjoy all the March Madness ahead. Roll Tide.
Thank you for having me. Roll Tide.